Today is May 3rd. Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform continues its operation. My name is Vasil Samakhvalov. The 3rd of May is the day when in 1992 since 1992 is celebrated as the Day of the Freedom of Press, and it's logical that we will be talking with Mykyta Poturaiev this day, the chair of the Humanitarian and Information Policy Committee of the Parliament of Ukraine. Good afternoon, Mr. Mykyta. Good afternoon, Mr. Vasil. Good afternoon. A very simple question. What about the freedom of speech in Ukraine as a country which is waging a war? How can we preserve the freedom of speech during this time as a basic value of the democratic society? Well, I have to say that I'm a bit surprised. I've seen the news today that we've made a huge leap. I think 20 positions ahead in the rating. We're currently at place 74 or 75 in freedom of media, in freedom of speech, in international rating. I was surprised by it because we understand that regardless the fact that we have freedom of speech of Ukraine, still the country is dangerous for the journalists. Unfortunately, many of our colleagues perished during this war or were otherwise injured during fulfillment of their duties. So yes, I was surprised. Obviously, it was a pleasure for me to see that, but I think there might have been some bugs in methodology, or maybe they were existing before and now they were removed, and this is how we got this place in this rating. But I think that we should congratulate each other with this, and we should hope that we will be witnessing the growth of our positions in this respected international rating. This is what I would like to start with. I hope that within this period, more than a year, that the full-scale aggression is being waged by Russia, the invasion, occupation of part of our territories, this part of the territories unfortunately increased comparing to the early 2022. Still, I think that we've passed those tribulations in a worthy manner. I mean, in terms of freedom of speech or protection of rights of journalists, we don't have military censure imposed. We did not introduce it in no way, in no manner, not a single %. However, when you communicate with foreign colleagues, a lot of them are surprised how come during the full-scale frontal war no military censure is imposed in the country. Well, this is like that. I think that Ukrainian journalists, Ukrainian media, they are first of all responsible. Since the beginning of the invasion, we had no single case when a work of Ukrainian journalists or media would harm or interfere with the activities of the armed forces. Everybody is responsible, everybody acts professional. I see no reasons to implement any restrictions for the operation of the free media. Well, this is what I would like to focus on, and I'm actually ready to proceed to the answers to the questions of my colleagues. Well, please let us hear their questions. Good afternoon. Maria Shikrenko, Ukrinform. There was a round table in the community of the journalists, the presentation of the fact that journalists are one of the targets of Russian Federation in this war. So what I would like to hear from you is how to ensure the security of journalists and other persons who are involved in study or covering the war circumstances. Well, as to the shedding light on the war, for those who work in the front lines or in the adjacent area, it all depends on the execution of the rights, adherence to the instructions by the Ministry of Defense, those provided by the press officers of the military units, first of all brigades, who hold the line in different sections along the forward edge. So the journalists who work in the fields, in the front lines, they know it, but I would like to emphasize it for the rest, that the conditions, they may vary. And the rules to be abided by, they're different too. However, mostly they're general. They were developed by the Ministry of Defense, for what I know, with involvement of Ukrainian media representatives. I know that there is an ongoing discussion. Sometimes it becomes complicated because there are, so to say, two emphasis or two types of motivation. The journalists want to receive the freshest material possible, and at the same time they want to stay at the secure place. The military, who are in charge of the lives of every civilian, and it's not only about some foreign journalists, but it's about any journalist, any sound producer, cameraman, whoever. So they are in charge of the security. They want to keep those people alive, and sometimes it creates tension. I wouldn't say conflict, but I know that there is dialogue going on. Sometimes not as prompt and smooth as the media representatives would like it to be, but please remember that the military, they want to protect your life, the life of every civilian, including journalists and any media people. So treat it with respect, and obviously the journalists and media people, they have their own goals. They have to shed light on the war. They have to be at those places where it becomes dangerous. So we have to preserve this balance, and in this balance the joint work is being created. And getting back to your question, how to ensure the security to the maximum extent, the security of the journalists, of the media people, is to adhere to the rules, to be in constant cooperation with the military command, with the command of those units you are at or where you're going to be. There is an old saying, the rules, the traffic rules, they are written with blood, and it can be related even to bigger scale to the war. The rules of behavior of the journalists in the war, they are written with blood, unfortunately, including the blood of journalists. So this is why you have to work in accordance with those rules, and this would increase your chances to preserve your life. However, not to 100% scale. We all understand that it's a war, after all. Thank you very much for your answer. Maybe it can be done, I mean the security of the journalists, maybe it can be somehow ensured on the legislative basis. Well, there is no way to do it, unfortunately, no matter how bad we want it, because you cannot contemplate everything by the law, and obviously you cannot envisage, you cannot forecast any situation or all of the situations in the front lines, in the forward edge. Sometimes there are counteroffensive operations, sometimes there are defensive operations. In some places the enemy uses one type of weapon, and in another section of the front line they apply something else. So unfortunately, on the level of legislation, the security of the journalists on the front lines cannot be guaranteed. Well, we will continue working on it. We will continue working on the matter of liability of the occupiers. We will increase it, but it's the matter of their prosecution in both Ukrainian and international courts. So getting back to the topic of the day, what are the top 3 main risks which could threaten the freedom of speech in Ukraine? Well, I don't think that I will be able to find 3 such risks, but the first one is that we don't want to believe it, and I hope it's not about to happen, but our first risk is our military loss, because we understand that in the occupied territories there is no such thing as freedom of speech, there is no such thing as security of the journalists, both professional and civil or public journalists. So the first risk is the loss of territories, and the occupiers come into more of Ukrainian lands where there is which becomes a threat for every Ukrainian citizen, whoever speaks Ukrainian, or even for those who do not. And obviously for the media, even for the media, such threats are bigger. And also I can say that regardless of the difficult situation with the Ukrainian media, they pass this difficult period in a quite difficult, but we are all confident that tomorrow will come. And as to the economic situation, it may be a risk, because we all understand that media should be making money. We are, in our conversations with our international partners, we bring up the issues of augmentation of the support, maybe target support to support Ukrainian media. Now we're getting financial support, but we think that this targeted support is not sufficient, unfortunately, for the time being. We think that it should be bigger. So it's the economic risk. As to the third risk, it's difficult to imagine something really in this regard. It's not so much of a risk, but rather the matter of rebuilding of Ukrainian media space. It's restructuring. It's related to a number of reasons. The share of Ukrainian YouTube, for example, growth. There is a number of Ukrainian citizens abroad, and they get united by Ukrainian YouTube. And I want to thank all the Ukrainian video bloggers who in fact created the full-fledged media. And this is how the Ukrainian citizens in any part of the globe, they have access to high quality Ukrainian content. So it's not so much of a risk, but rather a challenge. The fact that Ukrainian media, they have understand that those changes are forever. Well, it was something that was manifested before the hot phase of war. It grew into something. I mean, the decrease of the role of traditional media and the growth of the role of internet media, we have to understand that it's forever. And we have to learn to work in these new conditions, because the new conditions, they will be permanent. This is how I would like to put it. Well, and then the last question about the risk balance, the new opportunities. Everybody understands that national marathon is the only right choice for the country which is waging a war, because there is no alternative. On the other hand, the critics say that it kills the industry. So where can we find the balance? Well, I think the balance is found because the national channels, they switched on their, so to say, entertainment versions. We have the marathon, which is the main line. It's going on the majority of multiplex in digital broadcasting. Now I'm having a hope that multiplex MX7 will be opened, which will cover the border areas with Ukrainian signal. I mean Sumy region, Chernihiv region, and not only those, but also Volyn region, where we traditionally had this problem, where our citizens were forced to see the TV channels of the countries which are not that unfriendly, but they're aggressor and occupiers. So I think that the spectator sets the priorities for themselves, and the information block, well, it's mixed. The marathon is being made by national public broadcaster. The Ministry of Culture and Information Policy is involved, and along with the commercial companies, I think that everything is clear. Now we have the entertainment broadcasting getting back on screen. We have alternative information channels that, due to a number of reasons, are not on the schedule, but they're on the satellite, they are in the networks. So we have quite a diverse media landscape, not only in information terms, but I think that it should be preserved like this, it should remain like this. And we all believe, as the economic situation is stabilizing, and what we also work on and that we believe in, as our armed forces will develop their success, the situation with the media will continue stabilizing, and Ukrainian audience will receive more media products. They will be of different quality, obviously. Well, before this phase of invasion, well, maybe we will not resume everything right afterwards, but there will be different products for different tastes. I think it's a normal process, and what we all should remember is that it's not only about demand, or it's only about demand. If the spectator sees that content, well, it maintains the life of the producer of that product. Those channels that have a lot of spectators, a lot of likes, the success is obvious, but it works. I mean, it's more visible in internet, but it's the same story for the traditional media. Internet is a huge platform, and it depends on the number of subscribers, and the traditional media, they work in the same way. They're very dependent on the audience. But the future of Ukrainian media is in the hands of Ukrainian spectators, listeners, Ukrainian citizens, and I'm sure this future can be or should be carefully described as good, because the demand for Ukrainian media product since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, it grew exponentially, it grew colossally. Well, we paid a huge price for that, this realization that we should consume the Ukrainian product, but well, it happened. So let's consume the Ukrainian media, and I hope that everything will be fine with Ukrainian media. Well, with trust in Ukrainian media and with hope in Ukrainian armed forces, we will be wrapping up. We were speaking with Mykyta Poturaiev about the freedom of speech, and our next briefing is just in a couple of minutes at 15:30. Our guest will be Yuri Sobolevsky, the first deputy head of Kherson Regional Council, and we will talk about the shelling of Kherson and 58-hour curfew. See you shortly.